Okay, so I have a pair of ATVs in the shop behind me here sitting on a trailer, and I thought it was a good time to show my daughter Ava, who's 13 years old now, some of the basics of riding and see if it's something that she's maybe interested in doing. Now the only problem is the ATVs are about 17 years old now, and they haven't been started in the last 5. So I need to dust them off and change out all the fluids, and I'll see if I can get them running again. And at this point I need to get a little bit creative because they have to come off the trailer, but I'm out here by myself and I don't want to start them without first replacing the gasoline and the engine oil. So this may get a little bit interesting. Well, if you ask me, both quads are in great shape for 17-year-old vehicles. I don't have any oil leaks or anything like that. So this one here is a 2007 Arctic Cat DVX400, which is functionally equivalent to the Suzuki LTZ400. So it has a 400cc engine and a 5-speed manual shifter. And then this one here is a 2007 Suzuki LTZ250. So it has a 250cc engine. It also has a 5-speed manual, but in this case it has a clutchless shifter. So we found out that my wife has a much easier time without having to worry about the clutch. So we bought this one for her, and it's also a bit lighter and a little bit smaller, so it fits her frame better. Now both of these are sport quads, which means that they're two-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive, and there's no differential. Basically both back wheels are locked together. So being two-wheel drive, they're quite a bit lighter and more nimble than their four-wheel drive counterparts. And in terms of reliability, you know, both of these quads have been perfect. I've never really had anything break on them. I just do the routine maintenance from time to time, and that's pretty much it. So out back here, the 400cc quad, it has a swing axle rear end and a chain drive, whereas the 250cc quad has a solid axle and a shaft drive, so just like a truck or a Jeep. Now the 400cc machine, it's a lot more stable and faster, so that works a lot better out in the open terrain or in the sand dunes, whereas this little 250, it's smaller, not as fast, but it's more nimble, and with that solid rear axle, it can climb up over rocks and obstacles a lot easier. So this one's actually better for tight trails and rough terrain and things like that. Now, if you have to transfer liquids from time to time, you might want to check out one of these if you've never seen one before. This is called the flow tool, and it's basically just a siphon hose, but with a pretty unique little pump action here on the end. There's a little marble and a spring down in this end, and you put that into the liquid that you want to transfer, give it a few shakes, and that'll pull liquid up into this hose. And once the hose gets enough volume of liquid into it, then that siphon action takes over and it draws liquid by itself without you having to continuously pump. It works really good. The flow rate is really fast, so it saves you a lot of time. And it's definitely better than those hand pumps, or definitely better than sucking on the end of the hose to get the flow started. Now, of course, the liquid that you're transferring has to be at a higher level than the discharge side, just like with any siphon hose. Now, as far as I'm concerned, these Scepter military fuel cans were the best fuel cans that were ever made. So it should be no surprise that the government outlawed the sale of these, at least new ones, within the United States some years back. Now, if you're lucky, you may still find a used one off of eBay, and if you do, I suggest buying it. These are just really great. They're lightweight, they can't explode, and they just work really well, especially compared to the new style of gas cans that are federally mandated. Now, just in case you're wondering, I use these little pigtails on the side of each quad with these Anderson style connectors just to gain easy access to the battery. I have the same style connectors on the solar panel trickle chargers that I use to charge the battery when I'm not riding. And when I am riding, this just gets tucked underneath the seat, so it's out of the way. So this battery was last changed 5 years ago, and it's always been on the trickle charger. So let's see what voltage we get. Wow. Okay, I wasn't expecting that. So 12.9 volts. So this battery is really good. It was an AGM battery, and I don't think I'll have to touch this one. Let's go check the voltage on the Arctic Cat. Now, I did not replace the battery in this Arctic Cat here when I replaced the Suzuki battery, so it's really old, and I'm not really surprised to see it's only measuring 11 volts, and the lights are really dim as well, so this battery needs to be replaced. This is a Mighty Max AGM battery. This is the same make and model I used in the Suzuki. Since it's still holding up good after 5 years, I'm going to use it also in the Arctic Cat. .8 volts. Yep, that's better. Now this quad is a little more performance oriented than the other one. As you can see, it's water cooled versus the Suzuki over there is air cooled. It only has a single cylinder 400cc engine, but it's a high output engine. It has quite a bit of compression, and this quad is a bit faster than you would expect a 400cc quad might be. Also, it has an external oil tank, which helps to reduce the parasitic losses from having an oil sump inside of the engine there. It also means that the dipstick is over here. I'm going to go ahead and change out the engine oil. And on this quad, there's 2 drain plugs. There's going to be one for the engine and one for this external tank. And I'll take out the dipstick. And the oil is clean. I did replace it before putting this guy away 5 years ago. However, I'm going to go ahead and replace it again just because it's been sitting for so long and probably accumulating moisture. I didn't want to do that. Got my ratchet nice and lubricated now. Okay, I have the air filter out, and as you can probably tell from my gloves, this has plenty of oil on it still. It looks great. It's nice and clean. Everything checks out. It's also clean down in this box here. I don't have any signs of mice or anything. And there's a little screen down in here, which is probably hard to tell on camera, but it's also clean. So in terms of the air filtration, I think we're in good shape. Okay, so before I start this guy up, I want to spray out the carburetor a bit with some carb cleaner, just in case maybe some old gas has evaporated out and left behind some varnish. That's happened to me before, so I just want to be preemptive on that. So there's a little screw on here. This little piece here needs to come off. There's just a little clamp. So I loosen that screw there, and now this little piece here can come off. So now you can see down in there, and I just need to loosen up this clamp to remove this hose. Then I'll have free access to the carburetor there. Okay, let's see if this will start after 5 years of sitting idle. Let's put the choke on. Well, it almost did. was a success. You know, I might have had a little bit of carb cleaner still down in the carburetor when I started up, so I was a little afraid about it flooding. And also, this engine, it always runs great, but at startup, it is a little bit finicky in terms of where it wants the choke to be. But once you get that figured out, it's usually pretty straightforward and takes off from there. It had a little bit of hesitation, but it was still cold once it warmed up. It's running great now. Now you might have seen a little bit of smoke coming off of the side of the engine here or around the exhaust pipe. That's actually fine. Before I put these away, I always spray everything down with a little bit of silicone oil. That prevents any rust forming anywhere. And so once it gets hot, it starts to burn that off. So I think we're good to go on this one. At least it's running now. I don't want to drive it just yet. There's a few more things I need to do. I want to flush out the radiator and a couple of more odds and ends. And next I need to get the Suzuki started. This one's a bit easier to work on. You just need to take off this boot here from the carburetor and from the filter box. Then you can spray down right into the carburetor. Okay, let's see if this guy will start after 5 years of neglect. First attempt. Almost. There we go. This one always runs really smoothly. Okay, well I got both quads running. Now it's time to get them sort of trail ready, if you will. I'm going to start with the Suzuki here, and I'm going to drain out the old gear oil and put fresh stuff in. Last time I changed the gear oil in my truck, I use this little device here. Basically it's just a big syringe. So you suck oil out of your container, and then you use this little plunger to push oil into the gear, and worked out really well. So let's try it again. I'm going to be using this Valvoline Full Synthetic 7590. We just suck it in. All right, so that's definitely full. Okay, so on to the next challenge, and I don't know how well you can tell, but the brake fluid in this reservoir is a bit cloudy, which means it has absorbed moisture over the years, which isn't too surprising. So this brake fluid needs to come out and be replaced with fresh brake fluid, and the Arctic Cat brake fluid looks exactly the same way. So I got the compressor running, and I'm using this brake fluid extractor that I got from Harbor Freight a bunch of years ago. It's been used a bunch of times and has been very useful. And I just need to extract fluid from the front brakes on this ATV, because the rear brakes are mechanical actually. So I have some sort of nasty gummy stuff on the bottom of this cap here. I'm not sure what that is, if that's just gummed up brake fluid. But I need to clean that off, and I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and extract all the fluid out of the reservoir, clean up the reservoir a bit, and then add new fluid before I start extracting fluid out the bottom. Okay, and then Suzuki requires .4 brake fluid, so I picked this up. This is a Valvoline synthetic, conforms to 3 and 4. Perfect. Okay, we have clean brake fluid in. It's no longer cloudy like it was, and both front brakes have been bled. So we're in good shape on this one. Now I just need to repeat the process for the Arctic Cat over there. So the Arctic Cat has two brake fluid reservoirs, this one for the front, and then this one under the seat for the rear brakes. And the rear brake fluid is just as dirty as the front was, so I definitely need to flush it all out. Alright, so while I'm working on the Arctic Cat, I need to drain the old coolant from the reservoir here and from the radiator and put in fresh stuff. Okay, so I've done a lot of work and I'm getting really close to being done here. And if you're doing this sort of thing yourself, the Suzuki User's Manual is a really good reference. It has a detailed maintenance procedure. It'll give you a good idea of what sort of things need to be replaced and when. And I've already touched on most of the primary checklist items with a few exceptions. So this quad here, I'll need to check the chain tension, and then for both quads, I'll need to lubricate the chassis. Now, there are a few things on the checklist which I'll probably not get to just based on my knowledge of the quads and their maintenance history. And then after those things are done, I'll go ahead and just check everything out really well. And I'll ride both quads and see if there's anything else I need to take care of. So according to the specs, the chain slack on this machine should be between 1.2 and 1.6 inches. I'm measuring 1.3, so I think our chain slack is good. Now, you can never overstate the importance of doing maintenance to things like brakes and throttle mechanism. I actually know of a guy who got killed on his Kawasaki Ninja back in the mid-90s when he was working on the bike and he was trying to adjust the throttle, and it evidently got stuck in the wide open position. It was a pretty tragic situation, so that's always been a reminder for me that anytime I do any maintenance, I check this throttle mechanism to make sure it's moving freely, and I give it a little bit of lubrication. So you always want to make sure you have good grease on anything that moves here, and then I always like to use a bit of silicone oil, or WD-40 would work as well, and I spray it into the tube here that surrounds the cable, and that just makes sure that I'm not getting any oxidation in there that would possibly hang it up. I'll do the same thing on the other end of the cable as well. Well, I've been pushing this quad around over the last couple of days and struggling a little bit, but now after I've lubricated the chain and the sprockets, this almost feels like this thing is on skates. What a huge difference it made. So I should have started with that first, I guess. I've been using this AMSOIL metal protector for a bunch of years. It works really well. It dries in a sort of waxy form, and you can use it in most places that you would otherwise use grease. It's just not quite as messy, and it doesn't attract dirt quite as badly as grease does. Okay, I think the Suzuki's ready to ride now, but I found a couple issues on this Arctic Cat here that need to be resolved before I can ride it around. The first one relates to this clutch lever here. So hopefully you can tell there's a lot of play there that shouldn't be there. You know, the last time I rode the quad, the clutch engagement started way out here, and now I'm not feeling any resistance at all until I get right about there. So that's an awful lot of play, and I don't really know where that came from. You know, I know that cables can stretch over time, but this has just been sitting in the shop for 5 years, and that clutch cable hasn't been under any tension. So I don't know what happened, but I think I should be able to adjust out that play. So I need to do that before I can ride it. There we go. That's much better. I'm starting to feel engagement way out here where it's supposed to be engaging. And the second issue I'm having with this quad relates to the parking brake. Now the parking brake is engaging, but if I pull on the quad hard enough, I am able to get the rear wheels to turn. And I've already turned out the cable adjustment screw here as much as I can, which means that I need to take a look at the rear brakes there. Now this was an easy fix. I just loosened up this 12 millimeter retaining nut here, and I turned in this 12 millimeter bolt. It took me close to 2 full turns of the bolt to get the brakes nice and tight. And it required a lot of torque on this thing, and it looks like I've bent up that bolt a little bit. But now when I engage the parking brake, yeah, this guy's not going anywhere now. So I think the maintenance is done on both quads. Let's go for a ride. Okay, so it's been a couple of days since I started either of these quads, so let's see how it goes. I don't believe it. All right, let's try this one. that was fun. The Suzuki here, it's both running and driving perfectly, really smooth. Everything's working as it should. The Arctic Cat gave me a little bit of trouble there at the beginning. As you saw it, it started right up, and I thought I was going to get a good performance out of it, but once I started to drive it around a bit, I started to see some pretty bad hesitation. So I brought it back into the shop, and I sprayed some more carb cleaner in it and drove it around a little bit more, and that hesitation slowly went away. Once it worked whatever was in the carburetor out, it started running really nicely. Now it's running perfectly smoothly, and everything seems to be in order. The clutch is working as well. So that's about all I have for this video. I hope this was informative or interesting in some way. The next step is I'm going to start showing Ava how to ride, and we'll go from there. So we'll see you next time.